Well, thank you for coming to sit down and talk with us. I know you've got a busy campaign you're running, so we appreciate it. But for people at home who may not be the most familiar with you, tell me a little bit about yourself and your experience.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. It's good to be here. I live in San Diego. I came here by way of the Navy to support my sister about 40 years ago. But I grew up in a very rural community, much like Bakersfield and parts of California. In Southwest Virginia, came to California, and frankly, California gave me every opportunity, and to be able to live in a beautiful place like San Diego, to start a career there. I ran 3 women's reproductive health clinics, 1 in Los Angeles, 2 in San Diego. Managed to go to work for an elected official, and pretty much found my calling, working in public service. And ended up on the city council in San Diego for 8 years. Did a little bit of time as acting mayor when we had a bit of a crisis, and then got elected to the state legislature and the assembly, and have spent the last 14 years as an assembly member, senator. Had the incredible opportunity to serve as both the speaker and the president of the Senate. So in that regard, I've been to Bakersfield many times and across California, but it's a new endeavor to be running for governor and to travel across California.
Yeah, and I was going to follow up with that. I mean, obviously, you're very experienced with, California politics, all those years spent in it. Why now run for governor?
Well, again, I believe very much in the promise of our state, and I believe I do have the experience, the lived experience of having grown up in a community, rural. My mom and dad were both hardworking people. My dad was a lead miner, a coal miner, and a construction worker. My mom, a seamstress. And we struggled. And right now, I said California gave me every opportunity. What I see in the state is it's much harder to live and thrive here. When I got here, I was able to take advantage of that opportunity. California represents the American dream for me. And I want that to be true for others today. And sadly, it's not. We have work to do. Over the last 30 years, I really feel like the experience I've gained as an executive, stepping in as the mayor in San Diego, clearly working as a leader in the legislature, working with 2 very different governors, 8 on-time budgets in both surpluses and deficits. I really believe now is the moment to step up. And part of what I've been doing is really a listening tour across California, and this is what I'm hearing from people. It's harder to live and thrive, and we really want, the basics to be covered. And so it's been really exciting to get to connect with people. People's stories really matter. And, Michael, where I grew up, I told you about my background. We were very working poor. I don't think people listened to us. I certainly never felt heard. And I think the stories really matter. And so when you talk to people in their own neighborhood, in their own community, and they tell you what they're going through and what they want, that is something that really resonates with me in terms of public service.
Well, and so you mentioned, this kind of tour, so to speak, of meeting some of these communities and some of these people there. How much is what you're hearing from people influencing your priorities for this campaign?
Well, amazingly, it feels very connected. But you should, you gotta validate that. We talk a lot about affordability today. I've been in Red Bluff, Lodi, Stockton, Winters, and I'm hearing from people who say housing is out of reach, whether you want to rent or you want to try to buy a home like I was finally able to do. Healthcare is so critically important. It's uneven and hard to access. And frankly, issues like energy and the cost of energy. Obviously, food. Here we are in the food capital of the world, right here in Kern County, and people still have a hard time accessing healthy, nutritious food. So these are basics, and I think it really matches. I believe the 2 most serious affordability issues in this state, foundational, are housing and healthcare. If we can cover those issues, and then look at things that also cost, like childcare, obviously energy and food, those are the things we need to focus on. Those are the basic things that will help families be able to not just survive, but thrive.
So let's take a look at one of those issues, housing specifically, because that from, I've talked to several candidates at this point, and it seems like housing is kind of a main focus for a lot of people in this race. If elected governor, how do you plan to, what is your plan to kind of make housing more affordable for people?
Well, thank you. I've been working on housing policy for about 30 years at the local level in San Diego and at the state level. And for the longest time, and frankly, until the media said there is a crisis, people, especially representatives, elected representatives, didn't either hear it, believe it, or it's too complex. Because what we've had to do, and we have turned the corner on things like trying to cut red tape, address issues that keep housing from being built. When I got here, in 1985, there were over 200,000 units of housing being built. In 2008, when I was on the city council, 45,000. We have not built enough houses over the last 30 years. Had we been doing that, a lot of these housing units would be naturally affordable for people who need it. We've got to keep doing this. It cannot be a 1-year focus, a 2-year focus. It's got to be continual until we start to build enough housing. And we have started to do that, but it took us too long to recognize the crisis. The other thing I would say, it's supply demand, but we really have to now turn our focus to actually affordable units within those developments being done. I see lots of units going up in my own neighborhood in San Diego. Not enough of them are lower income at different levels for people who actually need it. That's going to be my focus.
Definitely. So let's talk a little about some of your other main priorities. Obviously, California is a very large state. It's got a lot of issues, so to speak, that people are facing. What would you say besides housing are some of your main priorities that you want people to know that you're going to run on?
Right. Well, it is going to be healthcare. I ran 3 clinics, and so I understand intimately, how hard it is to access healthcare. I grew up without healthcare. We always had a doctor's bill to pay in years that we could actually pay over time. That's not possible now. I've worked very hard to expand access to health care. Of course, we've just had the rug pulled right out from under our feet. We passed Proposition 35 to put more money into health care, to increase reimbursement rates, to give money to emergency rooms and to clinics. This has got to be a focus because, if people are always worried about health care or they access it at the very last minute, it's expensive. Your outcomes are not going to be good. So I've worked very much to get healthcare expanded, and we were doing it even to include those who are working in our communities but undocumented. We've got to refocus on that, and right now, again, we've had the rug pulled out from under us, but we've got to continue to focus on healthcare. Going to be one of my top 2 priorities: housing, healthcare.
And specifically in focusing on healthcare, obviously Kern County is one of those areas where I'm sure you've seen in some of these other communities, these rural pockets with healthcare. Especially when we talk about kind of this policy at the federal level, we're starting to see a lot of concern that some of these rural hospitals, may lose this funding and start to close down and limit these resources. How can we go about in California doing the work here to keep those facilities open? Well,
we have to prioritize this. This is our safety net. And many of these hospitals, particularly in rural communities, have been struggling for years in terms of how to keep the doors open. And it's not okay for people to have to travel 3 hours to get to specialty services. So I will tell you, it has to be a priority. The safety net, we've got to make sure we're shoring up the hospitals and the primary care clinics. It's all part and parcel of the safety net, and we've got to make sure the providers that we have can work to the top of their skill set. I supported legislation to make sure that nurse practitioners, physician's assistants could work with more broad, ability to do that. They're already serving these clients, their patients. So again, it's the top priorities. I've heard it from Red Bluff all the way down to Bakersfield, and it's true in urban communities as well as rural. So government has got to focus on the biggest priorities, and I think healthcare is one of those, particularly if we want our economy to continue to grow.
Well, and so I think that's kind of important, talking about, a lot of concerns I hear from people in this community is that they feel like elected officials, especially in the state of California at the highest level, aren't necessarily focusing enough on the basics. Governor Newsom especially has kind of really been pushing this kind of campaign against the federal government with lawsuits and things of that sort.
Right.
If you're elected as governor, how much of your focus would be on trying to stop things at the federal level to kind of keep California the way that it is?
Well, I understand the frustration. I mean, the fact that we've lost so much related to health care, the fact that we've lost dollars that would be going to help solve some of our housing solutions. I mean, look, California sends the most money of any state to the federal government. We want our fair share back. Look, I have a reputation as a collaborator. I love to work with people to solve problems and get solutions done. Ask your legislators here. We've had a wonderful working relationship to get things done. But we do have to protect California values. Look, when I decided to run for governor, to serve as governor 20 months ago, I didn't realize I'd be in the position to have to fight a federal administration for everything that we are trying to do here in California. It doesn't mean we don't tackle the challenges we already have. We have to. But we also have to hold the line and support California values, which is supporting our vulnerable communities, including our immigrants who work here and contribute to this community. It is about trying to hold the line on those values, but at the same time, address the challenges we already have in California. It's going to be a tough situation. And I would just say now more than ever, you need someone that has the experience to do that. And again, the last 30 years and the last 15 years, that's what I've been doing. And I think I will be, I don't think, I know, I will hit the ground running day one. I know what the challenges are. I know what we're going to have to do to address some of these, and it's going to take a lot of work, and you need someone that's got the experience to do it.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit more about the race itself. Obviously it's still a very crowded field here at this point. Obviously kind of a big name with former Vice President Harris that is now out. It's kind of created a new lane for people, I think, in this race. How are you kind of seeing the race currently? I mean, are you concerned with the number of candidates that are in there currently?
Well, no. I'm excited that people want to step forward and, the love of California. But the race is wide open. I mean, it's early. We're 10 months out. I believe the race is wide open, and it is really about taking the message to voters and listening. I think listening is leadership. It's listening, it's hearing the stories, it's coming back and taking away from that, what you really need to focus on is the priorities. So I feel pretty good. We've been doing the Toni in Your Town tour up and down the state, listening to folks and hearing what's important. But, I am raising the money. That's always what you have to do to run in a state like California. And I'm doing that. I am talking to people. I feel pretty excited. In fact, traveling the state, even when it's 108 degrees, is energizing for me. It's really energizing to hear what people think and feel. And it's amazing how communities are thrilled that you show up, and I think that's important.
Definitely. So another kind of question about the race, specifically, with polling. There was a recent report by Politico, and obviously with polling, it's an inconsistent science, but the polling kind of shows you specifically in that race, not really in the top three and kind of the low single digits. Does that kind of concern you at this point in the race?
Well, that's what campaigns are about. I mean, polls are not votes, and that's why you have to get out and meet people in the state where they live and where they are. And name recognition, it may be a challenge, but it's my job to go introduce myself to people in a different way. And I'm, of course, meeting people that know who I was as speaker and as pro tem. And while, I may not have run statewide, the job I've had leading and negotiating as the Senate President pro tem and the speaker, I've impacted 39 million lives. Whether people know it or not, it's my job as a candidate to let people know what I have been doing and what my commitment is, what my service has been, and that's what campaigns are.
Definitely. And so here in the Central Valley, it's typically an area that skews a little more conservative than the rest of the state. And from talking to a lot of people in this area, there are a lot of people that are very jaded about the state of California politics and kind of what they feel is like this unwavering supermajority.
Right.
I think a lot of people would potentially be critical, of you as someone who's been in the legislature for so long that feels like maybe that time in the legislature has hurt them. How would you go about trying to explain to them, that you are for them and what they're about?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. And I know that people feel jaded. I mean, in Red Bluff, when someone says, thank you so much for showing up, and I'm like, well, that's a pretty low bar. That's, there needs to be an expectation for more. And that's clearly true in Central Valley, too. I've been here many times. I love Bakersfield. It reminds me of where I grew up in Southwest Virginia. And it reminds me always of communities that feel overlooked. This community in particular, Kern County, you look at what it offers the state of California. You're an energy producer. You are the food basket of the world. I grew up in an agricultural community. I think too often people feel that's overlooked here, particularly in Kern County and in Bakersfield. Maybe it's why I resonate with Central Valley, because I believe very much in what it offers the state of California. I will say it is true that it sometimes can feel with a supermajority, but that supermajority doesn't agree. I mean, you've got Democrats from Central Valley all the way to San Francisco and Los Angeles. That's a very diverse group of Democrats even. So I think if you would ask legislators, Republican or Democrat, I've always really felt like our job is to serve constituents regardless of where they are. I mean, I grew up in a very conservative community. When I was in San Diego, the city council was mixed. It was 50-50. If you didn't work across the aisle, you couldn't get things done. And so I bring that perspective to the table, and I think in my time here in Bakersfield in particular, and Kern, people have learned that about me. I have some good support I'm very proud of in the agricultural community, and so I hope to grow that.
And so kind of take me through, how long have you been in Bakersfield today? Is it?
I got here yesterday.
Okay.
Been here many times, but have swung through here a lot. It's why I'm trying to get to other parts of the state that I haven't been to, the far reaches of the north and some smaller towns and cities. Lodi, that was really enjoyable. But this is one of my favorite places. People are often, I think, surprised when I say it's one of my favorite communities. I'm a huge country music fan, so big fan of the Crystal Palace, Buck Owens, Dwight Yoakam, Merle Haggard. I can tell you my top 10 songs for each artist. So, this feels more like home to me from where I grew up.
Well, and I don't know if you heard recently, unfortunately, the Buck Owens Crystal Palace is closing.
Well, we're working. I have friends who are working on
that.
It's not my
Sure,
thing.
Sure,
but we don't want to lose that. I mean, it's iconic. Mm-hmm. Iconic.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and we were kind of talking beforehand too. That's kind of the beauty of California, is that it's a very diverse place. The culture of San Diego is different even to Los Angeles, which is different to the northern reaches. What do you think that says about the kind of person that needs to run for governor to deal with that kind of or to work with that kind of population?
Well, I think it is an appreciation of everything that is California. We are not a monolith. There is so much to appreciate about this state. And people often call it a nation state. It's the most diverse. I think you need someone, and I believe very much, that is really going to listen, understand that one size does not fit all. That you really have to take a look at different communities and be prepared to understand that it's going to take different solutions in different parts of the state. Just take water policy. It's different in San Diego than it is Central Valley, than it is the Delta and the far north. So you have to understand all those perspectives and be willing to hear them and bring the stakeholders to the table early. I mean, that's part of the listening and the collaboration. Stakeholders need to come in early, not at the end, because they're the ones that are going to offer you what works for their communities, and you need to be prepared to bring all that to bear on solutions.
Absolutely. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about with your campaign that maybe we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I think, the thing I would say really matters to me is this really is about public service. I am focused on the challenges of California. this is what I want to do. And I have just been so grateful to be able to serve. This is more than a young woman who grew up in Southwest Virginia could have ever imagined, particularly coming from a very working class family, working poor, growing up in a house with no running water. We had an outhouse, carried water from a spring. Again, California gave me every opportunity. I'm grateful. The service I've been able to do, whether in San Diego or in Sacramento, has just been more than I could have imagined, and I feel grateful to everyone that allowed me to do it.